Hello everyone, Kitch here. Welcome back to episode 6 of The Forgotten Coast. Happy Sunday everyone. It feels great to be back in Planet Coaster. Weekends are always precious to me after a hard week of work. It's such a joy to be able to play this game and create this content for you all. So jumping right into it here. As you can see, I'm taking one piece and moving it around left and right, rotating, duplicating. What am I doing? I am creating this rockwork. That's what I'm doing. And one thing about this, there's actually a lot about the rockwork I want to talk about. But the first half of this episode is sort of this, I'm calling these rocks even though they're temple pieces, but we're, just for the sake of conversation, we'll refer to them as rocks. And there's a lot I want to talk about with this. Both some advantages, disadvantages, how I'm constructing this, pitfalls that you could fall into when doing this type of build style, and a whole different host of things. So to start, kind of what I'm doing here is just creating this rock structure that's kind of the overarching theme and sort of the signifier of Storm Rock. Like what is Storm Rock? So when I say, when I tell you I'm going to make this theme and it's going to be Storm Rock Island, and what is that? How would you describe it? And this rockwork is sort of my idea, my interpretation of exactly how I would describe it. Very jagged, withered, and worn away by the storm. Very sharp, very black. It stands out and contrasts the rest of the colors in the water around it. So that's why this is really kind of, I'm hoping at the end of this episode you'll really start to see and understand the theme that I'm going for here, if you haven't already, and that's exciting. So a couple things, advantages of building like this. So kind of the style I'm doing here is just a simple duplication technique where you take a piece, rotate it, place it in a different orientation, and it's the same piece over and over again. And an advantage of doing it this way is, and you can see as I'm doing this actually, you can take 4, 5, 6 handful of pieces, pull them out to the side, get them in the configuration you want, and then just duplicate that group over and over and rotate that group over and over. It'll save you a ton of time. So an advantage of this is a lot of time savings. It's actually fairly easy. I think I built this whole thing in 45 minutes maybe of footage. What you're seeing today is sped up about 5 times. Now, a different approach to making something like this would be more of a, an orderly, like a building or some sort of construction it's not as natural looking, that has, a specific shape walls. Maybe you're trying to model an actual island or building or whatever. And doing that, this technique wouldn't really work because you need to be precise in how you lay things out. Now, one thing that's nice about doing it this way is there's not really a right or wrong. It's almost like splattering paint on a blank canvas. You kind of just put these pieces in whatever combination you want, sort of making a general shape as you go, and then you can start tweaking it a little bit if you need to, adding a few pieces, filling in the gaps. And you can see that's exactly what I kind of start doing here. I'm just filling in the gaps, trying to make it look a little more complete. So that's kind of the advantages of doing this. One of the disadvantages, one of the things that you need to be aware of if you're building something in this type of style where you're, any rock work where you're just copying and pasting, that kind of stuff, you need to be really careful about repetition. You don't want to make it look too repetitive. Now, I have it fairly easy here because of the nature of the piece itself. It's difficult for the eye to catch repetition in this type of pyramid looking shape, because there's so many different angles and geometry is so complex. Whereas if you see a lot of rock work people do where it's kind of more of a circular, easy to pick out shape, you need to be really careful about not having the same piece duplicated over and over and over again, because it will look repetitive, and people will see that. It won't look as good as you won't get the outcome you're looking for. So another thing I want to talk about with this is kind of the realism aspect. As you saw from the title, This episode is called Realism Rocks. Kind of a play on words, because first half is all about rocks, second half is a little more of the realistic stuff we'll get into. Do want to add quick, as you are seeing this, I did decide to put a few of these tropical rocks just on the outside, just to give it a little more, just to blend it a little more with the water. And I did a little bit of terraforming here, just because this is driving me crazy, these like gaps underneath. Not that you're really going to be able to see that. But so the other thing I want to talk about with this rock work is it realistic? Is this something that would actually be made if you had millions and millions of dollars to spend? Would this be built in real life? And it could be. From working in the industry myself, I can tell you there's actually specific design firms that specialize in rock work type of stuff, just like this. And I will maybe flash a few images on screen here of some examples. Volcano Bay is a water park in Orlando, Florida, that Universal, that's got a very complex volcano rock work. Maybe some other Disney constructions, such as the Pandora Avatar world or Star Wars. They all use this fake rock work, and the way it's built is they actually go through with a sort of a lattice, almost like a cage, like an iron or lattice structure that is basically built out of, it's like this wire mesh is really what it is. And then what they do is they use shotcrete, this concrete that's just, they shoot out of a gun essentially, and they cover this entire lattice structure with this concrete that has this very like rocky weathered look. And then they go back and they, it's really an artistry. They go back and they chisel and they mold it, and they make it look exactly how they want to. So it is a real detailed and specific, very niche industry. So I imagine this would be quite the complex example. If this was built in real life, they'd have to go in and do quite a bit of molding and tweaking of the rock to make that jagged piece. And then of course, there's ways that they can color the rock to whatever color they want. That's another part of it. So the dark color would be reasonable. They could do it that way. So I do believe this is realistic in the terms it could be constructed if you had enough money, and of course that's always a big part of amusement parks and construction in any sense of reality, is the budget is always a big issue. So moving on here, this is sort of the second main part of the episode. We are putting in some slide supports for our Beacon Racers, Mat Racer slides. Supports are always sort of tricky to get right, and I'm not a structural engineer, so I tried my best to look at images online to try to get an idea of how, generally how slides would be supported. Usually they have sort of a piece that connects right to the fiberglass at one of the flange connections here. This piece is not exactly what it looks like, but I think this piece works pretty well. Makes it look fairly realistic, so I went with it. Then they've got simple, what they actually call yokes, would be like the steel beams that connect back to a column. Usually they have a horizontal one, and then oftentimes, most of the time, they have a diagonal piece to protect against certain types of loading that they might experience, some of that transverse loading on the columns. So that's my very rough understanding of it. Any structural engineers out there, chime in the comments below. Let's hear some more information about this. But that's sort of what I went with. Now this was tricky because the columns, I wanted to fit the columns around the buildings that I'd already constructed below. So I kind of had to lay out the locations of these sort of without necessarily making it easy on myself to connect to the slide. The other difficulty with this is, since there was 4 slides, in some places they're all stacked on top of each other, there wasn't a lot of space to actually fit the connections in certain areas. So maybe, like this piece that you're looking at right now, like the slide might be, if they're stacked on top of each other, I don't have room to sort of have that piece continue below. So a little tricky to get these to work. I kind of had to just find spots where I could fit the the steel beams and columns, and I think it looks okay in the end. One thing I did add in a few places is these concrete footers. I didn't like that the columns were just kind of going into the roof or the rock or whatever it was without any sort of real like platform that they would sit on. So I built these kind of platforms using the same colors and textures of the other wall pieces of the lighthouse, so it sort of could blend in. And I think that makes it look a little more realistic for sure. Here's another example of that little gap that I needed to fill in somehow. I chose a window this time. Flipped it upside down, changed it gray, and it's hardly even noticeable. You can't even tell. So continuing on with the supports, there's quite a few supports, and custom supports do take a lot of work. I always envy the people, or I don't envy, sorry, I commend the people who go to the effort to do custom supports on their coasters in this game, and I think it can look really good at the end if you do it right. So in this case, since everything about these slides is custom art shapes and supports or whatever, I didn't even have an option. I had to do custom supports. And this will be a recurring theme throughout the project. For every single slide that I build, we'll be doing supports at some point. Whether I always include the custom supports in the video or not, that one we will see. I want to show the most entertaining content for you guys, and whether supports showing me doing slide supports for 10 minutes is entertaining or not, I don't know. So we'll see in future episodes how much of this type of stuff we include or not in the video, but for this first run through, I wanted to show everyone the process of how I've been doing this, what it takes, what pieces I'm using, and we'll just go from there in the future. So just about done wrapping up with the slide supports themselves. Just got a couple more we have showing here. I want to point out that in some cases I did the slide support above the fiberglass slide, and in some cases I built support below the fiberglass slide. I did, from images online, I've noticed that they do construct it. They can construct it both ways. I'm not sure what the actual preference would be. I would guess that putting the steel supports underneath the fiberglass would probably be the preferred method, but I know there's a lot of cases in some real world projects I've worked on personally where these slide manufacturers end up sort of having some weird column and yoke and beam locations and connections to the slides. So sometimes I know there's not a one size fits all type of construction. They have to get a little creative with it at times and construct different ways, different things. So here I am adding these kind of diagonal supports underneath that just connect right back to that same column. Something to note that most of the time in these slides, the piping itself that supplies the water supply to different areas in the slide, maybe there's some nozzles, the start tubs, etc., that kind of stuff, it would run up those columns. And I will admit, I even looked and tried to see what the smallest cylinder piece I could find was, and I even thought for a second, would it be interesting to add some piping up the slide? And I immediately was like, no, we can't go down that rabbit hole. That's just going to be insane. So we're not going to be showing something of that detail, but just for everyone's information, it would typically run up slide columns like that, so you can attach the piping directly to the column. So with the slide supports out of the way, we're back here at the boathouse. There was a couple things I wanted to finish up, things I didn't really quite finish up in the last episode, such as like this fence work. I think I had said previously that I was going to add some clutter and stuff near the boathouse itself, and I added some barrels and crates over there. With the fence here, every time I make a fence or a railing, whatever it is, I always try to do something a little different. I don't like to use the exact same pieces. Now you can just take an out-of-the-box fence that Planet Coaster has. There's so many options, but I always like to make it a little more custom. So I try to usually build it out of different pieces, and then sometimes I'll add some fence pieces themselves here. So this time I went with this kind of smooth stone, just for a different texture. And then I went back with these wooden haunted house pillars, I think they're called, for just another texture. Sometimes mixing textures can create a really nice look, and just having these spaced out kind of helps create that symmetry look, and that conveys that it's an actual fence. It's not really a fence, I guess, like a railing for the guests. And then I come back at the end here with an actual out-of-the-box fence. I think I end up going with the crypt fence. This here is just the sort of a gate to allow access down to the dock if needed, but of course we don't want guests going down there. So here I go with the, I guess I first start with the stone. I thought I did the fence work first, but we'll get back to that. This I did add a little bit of cobblestone work underneath. Again, just another texture, bringing in there, trying to keep it very subtle though, not overwhelming the build with too many textures and colors. Again, using this stone, I've used it a couple times already in this build, so I'm just kind of trying to replicate those textures a little bit, just to kind of keep them popping up here and there. So here's what I was trying to talk about with the crypt fence that I go run through over the top. Just an extra little layer. I think this fence is really nice because the railing before was looking kind of smooth, a little fancy, kind of nice, but I think this crypt fence that has these like kind of wooden, they're angled, they're a little jagged, it looks old. That kind of brings you back to the Storm Rock feeling of, we're not in a nice, comfortable environment. It would be a little more rugged over here on the island. So I think that really makes the fence what it is at the end. So another thing I hadn't finished is I wanted to add some fences of some sort here, some barriers to kind of corral each of these little alcoves. This is the VIP kind of cabana seating that you would pay extra for to rent out for the day. So I toyed around with this a lot. Most of this I cut out. I tried using like a curtain of some sort, different fences. I wanted it to be, to actually have like a barrier that you couldn't really see through for more privacy. So I settled on these wooden pillars and then just these wooden post fences. Just colored them gray to keep them subtle. And I actually liked how they turned out. I think I'm a big fan of that wooden pillar piece. I use it all the time. It's anytime you want to make just a super rugged looking fence, or I feel like that wooden pillar is like just a simple wooden fence like that is the kind of epitome of sort of a Western or rugged fence look. So I use it all the time. Most of the builds I do in this game tend to kind of fare on the side of like adventure style, more rugged. I don't do a lot of modern. It's something I've been trying to play around with a little more. I'm trying to use different materials that I'm not used to. So that wooden pillar is a piece that you'll see me use all the time. It's very versatile. Here I just added a small little sign for the restroom, just so the guests could see where that's located. Again, this would be a restroom that would be just for the VIP cabana customers, whatever we want to call them. And then I added a few more chairs, just for each location to just, they may have more people there than a larger group that they want seating for, and they can move around these chairs however they wish, but for now they're up against the wall. Now this was kind of fun. This part of the video is actually one of my I think my favorite part of the episode, and I try my hand at creating a couple drinking fountains. Now, funny story, in the US, I would say most of the time these would be referred to as a drinking fountain. Sometimes I have heard, they're often called water fountains. I'm not sure in other parts of the world what these are called. Now, in a small part of the US where I'm from, in a state called Wisconsin, if you're not familiar, usually we're most known for our cheese. We call these bubblers. And I always say that to people, and they're like, what the heck is that? And I grew up calling them that. I don't know where it came from exactly. My guess would be that the old style, the ones that you'd often see in gymnasiums up against the wall, that porcelain material, maybe, they kind of bubble out. They create that bubbling look. So maybe that's where the name came from. Not sure. I would have to look that one up. But anyway, I tried my hand at creating one of these myself. I went with a little more of the modern style that's not that porcelain, but it's got kind of just, you walk up, it's got the buttons on the sides and the front that you push, and it just comes right out. Whereas the old style, it's more of like a crank handle that you turn. These are going to just be a simple press button. And at first I was like, as always, I'm like, I don't know if I like them, but I think they actually turned out pretty well. So the second little piece of realism that we're adding here is a towel rack. I figured most of the places in this park, you're going to bring your own towel. But I did want for the VIP seating, it's kind of weird to call it VIP, but the cabana seating, the pay to reserve seating, I wanted there to be some towels that they provide for you that you can use, similar to like a hotel swimming pool. They have these fresh towels, and then you just, when you're done with them, you can dump them right into the laundry basket. So that's what I went with here. I went with that curved flag piece, but if you sink it into the wall, it kind of makes the appearance of just a square, small folded up towel. So actually, shout out to my girlfriend Em. She helped me out with that one, getting that to look just right. So now, coming over here next to the actual laundry kind of basket itself, that you would throw your dirty towels in, I just went with a similar, design here with those wooden pillars again. And that fence kind of created the mesh look on the sides that I was looking for. So just, a lot of these little small elements, I really enjoy building this kind of stuff, trying to find what pieces are going to work for each part. And some people are really good at this. I'm sure if you're in any Discord communities, or I've seen in the workshops, there's some Planet Coaster builders out there that are just amazing at this really small stuff. And then of course you have the TMTK where, people take it to a whole nother level, and they get very realistic looking, small assets like this. Now in this park, as I've said, we're not using TMTK. One, for performance issues. Two, it's just not really my style. I like to build everything myself. If I was good enough at those modeling softwares like Blender and Maya, I would dabble in some TMTK myself, but I've given it a try. It's pretty over my head, so for now we're gonna use the in-game pieces to make everything we can. So I call these alcoves. I think it's okay. I might change the name. I think I like it. I think I'm gonna leave it. And we end up calling this whole little area, I believe it's the storm. You'll see in the cinematics, I think it's the Stormy Shore alcoves or something like that. Since it is sort of an extra location in the park that the viewers would, the patrons would pay to use, I added some turnstiles here. These just come from a current blueprint that I've used these before. I'll probably use them again at the entrance of the park, and it's just the snowman pipe rotated about 3 times to make that turnstile look. It's not my original idea. I've seen many people do this. Snowman pipe is one of the ultimate tiny pieces that people have used in so many different ways. When in doubt, use the snowman pipe. It will probably have what you're looking for. So I did add a worker here to to kind of assist and kind of monitor this area. And then this was my attempt at maybe this is like a fingerprint scanner. I just went with the bracket and took this little firework to try to make some sort of very subtle 3D looking, little place that you would put your finger. It's very minor, very subtle, but hey, sometimes that's what you gotta do. So here, this is the Ghostbusters, whatever the heck that is. I don't know. It's like some sort of piece. I don't know Ghostbusters. It's some sort of piece that they would use to fight ghosts. But I rotated it 3 different directions, and you basically get 3 awesome tiny pieces that work great for any like electronic looking, a switch or a plug or something. Really, really handy piece to have. Ghostbusters pack is really good. So the last thing we build in this episode is just the little area that you would go up to the counter to purchase a reservation to one of these alcoves for the day. And then it's just really a lot of little realistic things like this towel that the lifeguard might be having hanging up on the wall here. I think I put a water bottle in, a little table, just small little elements to fill this space. Just trying to make it realistic. Really, it's pretty simple. She's got her computer and the counter, and that's probably about all you need. It's probably not a very complicated location to theme here. So yeah, there I go with the ornament little water bottle. That's my representation of a water bottle, at least. So that's pretty much bringing us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with the show so far. I am really enjoying this, and I cannot wait for more episodes to come. So leave a comment. Always appreciate it. Like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will cut to some cinematics or fade into some cinematics here, and I will see you all in the next one.